Hey there, deep divers. Ready to stretch our minds a bit. Today we're diving into yoga, but not your typical studio session kind of yoga.
Right.
We're going deeper with Aleister Crowley's 8 lectures on yoga.
Yeah, Crowley's work, it tends to precede him a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
So you might be surprised to hear that he actually kicks off these lectures by practically begging his students to ditch the esoteric expectations, right? Forget the robes and the incense and all of that.
Yeah.
He really wants to cut through the mystique and make yoga accessible.
It's interesting.
Even to self-proclaimed yahoos, as he puts it.
Yeah, and you're right. He emphasizes that simple approach throughout these lectures.
Absolutely.
He uses really common sense examples and relatable language, which I think is refreshing.
Yeah.
Because it can be very intimidating
Oh, absolutely.
to even approach this subject sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what Crowley was reacting to in his time, right? All this sort of shrouding it in mystery.
Right.
And he's like, guys, this is about finding union within reality, not escaping it.
And he even says, forget the obelisks and odalisks.
Yeah, he wants us to understand it's not about escaping reality. It's about finding union within reality.
So how does he define that union? Because that's kind of a loaded word, especially in this context.
Yeah, well, he even goes so far to say that we're all experiencing yoga all the time,
Really?
whether we realize it or not.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
How so? Take his example of cheese.
Okay.
He argues that even something as simple as tasting cheese is a form of yoga. It's the union of our senses with that cheesy goodness.
So you're telling me my cheese obsession is secretly a spiritual practice?
Well, maybe not spiritual in the traditional sense. Okay.
Right.
His point is that union, the core of yoga, is happening constantly. The air we breathe merging with our lungs, the food we eat becoming part of us. He even sees scientific principles like the combination of atoms as a type of yoga.
Wow. That's reframing things a bit.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
He's really broadening the scope.
Yeah. So if this union is happening everywhere all the time, what's the point of actively practicing yoga? What are we actually trying to achieve?
Now we're getting to the heart of Crowley's argument, and it's where things get really interesting. You see the type of yoga we experience passively in our daily lives, those fleeting moments of union. They often come with a side of dissatisfaction. We crave more cheese, more fresh air, more connection, and the pursuit of these desires can leave us feeling incomplete.
I think we can all relate to that feeling of wanting more, of never quite being satisfied. You're saying Crowley sees yoga as a way out of that cycle.
Exactly, and that's where the 8 limbs of yoga come in. But maybe we should save that for after a quick break.
Okay, sounds like a plan. All right, deep divers, we're back. And before the break, we were talking about how even those fleeting moments of union that we experience in everyday life can leave us wanting more.
Yeah, and to navigate that constant ebb and flow, that craving for something more, Crowley presents a framework, a set of guidelines, really, for a more fulfilling life. The 8 limbs of yoga.
8 limbs. That sounds a little intimidating. Where do we even begin?
Well, he starts with the first 2 limbs, yama and niyama. Think of them as the foundation upon which the rest of your practice, your journey really is built.
Okay, yama niyama. Those are some new words for me. What do they actually mean?
Yeah, so yama is often translated as restraint, but Crowley sees it as something much more proactive and empowering.
All right.
He compares it to the preparations you'd make before embarking on, say, a Himalayan expedition.
Oh?
You wouldn't just show up at the foot of Mount Everest without the right gear, the right training.
Right. See, a good point.
Mm.
You need a solid plan, the right equipment, and probably a good dose of mental fortitude to tackle something that challenging.
Precisely. Yama is about creating those conditions for success, for mental control.
Yeah.
But not through rigid rules or self-denial.
Yeah.
It's about understanding your own personal limits, your tendencies, and making conscious choices that support your growth. As you ascend that mountain, conditions change and you adapt your approach accordingly.
So instead of some strict moral code, Yama is more about self-awareness and making choices that create a solid foundation for inner work.
Exactly. And then we have niyama, which is often translated as virtue. This limb focuses on cultivating positive qualities within ourselves. And Crowley gets really interesting here. He uses the planets and their astrological symbolism as a framework.
Hold on, astrology. Crowley linked planets to personal growth. Tell me more.
He did, for example. He associates Saturn, with its rings representing limitations and boundaries, with discipline and endurance, cultivating what he calls Saturnian qualities, like patience and perseverance, is crucial for navigating the challenges of a dedicated practice.
That makes sense. Like when you're trying to meditate and your mind won't stop chattering, or you're holding a challenging yoga pose and your muscles are screaming, that's where those Saturnian qualities kick in.
Exactly. And Crowley argues that cultivating these inner resources is essential because, let's face it, deep transformative work isn't always glamorous or exciting.
Right.
It can be downright boring at times.
Yeah.
Remember Crowley's point about the cheese?
Yeah.
The initial excitement of that first bite eventually fades. True fulfillment, he argues, comes from mastering ourselves, from developing the inner strength to persevere even when the initial excitement wears off.
So yama and niyama are about laying the groundwork for personal transformation, creating the right conditions for growth, and cultivating the inner strength to stay the course. It's about building that unshakable inner mountain climber, ready to face any challenge. But what about the actual practice of yoga? What about the physical postures, the breathing techniques?
Ah, yes. Now we're moving into the more tangible aspects of Crowley's approach, starting with asana, or the physical postures of yoga.
Okay, asana. This is the part of yoga most of us picture, right? Poses, the stretching. But knowing Crowley, I'm guessing he had some strong opinions about this too.
You bet Crowley was not afraid to call out what he saw as pointless contortions.
Yeah.
He really believed that the true power of asana lied in finding a posture that was both comfortable and still. It's not about how impressive you look in Warrior II. It's about quieting the body so you can quiet the mind.
He's all about practicality, isn't he? No need to twist yourself into a pretzel if it's not serving a purpose.
Exactly. And just like with those Saturnian qualities we were discussing, Crowley believed that true mastery of asana comes from pushing past that initial excitement.
Okay.
He actually compares it to a child with a new toy.
Right.
Remember that feeling. You're completely captivated at first, but eventually the novelty wears off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's when the real work begins,
Yeah.
right? Sticking with it even when it's not shiny and new anymore.
Exactly. And that brings us to pranayama, often translated as breath control.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, I'm all ears. Breathwork is something I've been wanting to learn more about. How does Crowley approach it?
Crowley saw pranayama as a way to directly regulate the body's energy flow.
Okay.
He described 4 distinct stages of practice, each with increasingly intense physical manifestations. We're talking perspiration, muscle rigidity, even involuntary movements. He called one stage Buchari Siddhi, which he described as, and I quote, jumping like a frog.
Hold on. Did he just say levitation? You're kidding.
He did mention levitation, yes. But he also emphasized that these were extreme examples requiring immense dedication and discipline.
Right.
But it's exciting to think about, right?
Yeah.
These practices hint at the hidden potential of the human body and mind.
It's like we're only scratching the surface of what we're truly capable of. But let's be real. Not all of us are trying to levitate anytime soon. Did Crowley offer any practices that are a little more approachable for us regular folks?
Absolutely. Even amidst these advanced techniques, Crowley always brought it back to practicality. He was a big advocate for mantra yoga, a form of pranayama that involves the repetition of specific sounds or phrases.
Okay.
He believed this practice was accessible to everyone and even integrated it into his own personal practice.
It's fascinating how he seamlessly blended these seemingly disparate elements. Ancient wisdom, personal experience, and a dash of good humor. He really challenged conventional thinking, didn't he?
He absolutely did. Crowley's approach to yoga wasn't about blindly following dogma, but about personal exploration and self-discovery.
Right.
He wanted us to question our assumptions about reality, to explore the untapped potential within ourselves, and to find practical ways to integrate these ancient practices into our modern lives.
So what does this all mean for you, dear listener? As we've uncovered in this deep dive, Crowley's approach to yoga is both intriguing and at times unsettling. He challenges us to reconsider not only what yoga is, but also what our everyday experience truly is. If our ordinary perception is just one type of reality, what other states of consciousness might be possible through dedicated practice? That's something to ponder as you go about your day.
Remember, it's not about achieving some mystical goal, but about the journey, the continual process of self-discovery and transformation. And as Crowley reminds us, even small, consistent efforts can yield extraordinary results.
Wise words to live by. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Aleister Crowley's yoga. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.